The impact of tax reform. In a Fox Business exclusive, JPMorgan Chase Chairman and CEO Jamie Dimon told me he is bullish about the year ahead. He expects to be paying out consistent dividends and investing in his business consistently. He also shared his thoughts on cutting the corporate tax rate to 21%, all the way down from 40%. What do you feel is the impact of this when you talk about a 21% corporate rate versus all the way down from close to 40%? That's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
What's the impact?
And I think one of the mistakes that people make is that somehow what's the impact tomorrow is going to have a huge cumulative effect. And I'm actually kind of surprised that people say having an uncompetitive tax system would be good for America. So the world, if you go back 20 years ago, the world was at almost 40%. We are at 40%. Now most of the world is close to 20%, and we're at 40%. I look at competitive taxes for business as table stakes. It's a bad idea. And by most measures, it's driven capital, brains overseas, and some, I think it was Price Waterhouse, E&Y estimated 5,000 companies that would have been headquartered here are now headquartered overseas, mostly by acquisition of foreign companies. So it was a huge disadvantage. You're going to see companies doing things in the short run, like increasing wages and a bunch of stuff like that, or one-time bonuses, and we may do something. We're going to announce it sometime later. But over time, that retained capital will be used to grow businesses, R&D, hire people, wages, competition. And over time, they'll be very good for America.
Joining us right now to weigh in, global economics editor for the Wall Street Journal, John Hilsenrath. John, good to see you. Thanks for weighing in here. Jamie Dimon talked about that corporate tax rate coming down and basically having an impact not over the near term, but over the mid and longer term.
He certainly did. And, you know, the other thing, like Dagan, I looked at the transcript, and what jumped out at me is he's saying that we could get to 4% growth over that medium term. You know, that's pretty striking. We talk to economists all the time, and they say, no, 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 no. You know, we might get a little more growth right now, but 2% is the track that we're on because of productivity and labor force. And Jamie Dimon is on there telling you the economists are wrong. We actually could get 4% growth.
Yeah, that's right, Dagan. I mean, you know that Goldman Sachs is out with a report also talking about 4%. And the Atlanta Fed came out and raised its estimate on the economy. Now people are speculating about 4 rate hikes from the Fed, Dagan, in 2018.
This kind of talk and action from the likes of Jamie Dimon, one of the great CEOs in America, regardless of what you think about his politics, is critically important because, as John has talked about, optimism begets optimism. Momentum leads to more momentum, and ultimately these decisions fall in the hands of Jamie Dimon, and if they are optimistic and they are positive about the direction of policy in this country, then that will lead to more spending. It will lead to more job creation. It will lead to an even more powerful economic expansion. And I think that's why a lot of people are underestimating how fast this economy could grow with this, particularly corporate tax reform, in the months and years ahead.
So,
yeah,
Maria,
and we also talked about the individual side of the tax plan, John, because remember, he's a New Yorker. He loses that SALT deduction. I won't give it away what he said, but even there, he was quite positive. And by the way, they have this thing called the JPMorgan Institute, John, which is basically their data bank. They've got all this data about what individuals are spending, what they're making, how much money is going in, how much money is going out. So they have a real sense of what people are spending their money on and when.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I'm with Dagan on this. I think that the real action, you mentioned the SALT and the individual side. I think the real action in this tax reform is what's going on the corporate side. And what Jamie Dimon talked about in your interview, which struck me, was the international comparison. You know, how much American business has been driven overseas by the disconnect between a 40% tax rate here and a 20%, 15% tax rate even in places like Europe, Ireland, and such. And, you know, what he's talking about is the playing field being leveled, and over time, not overnight. It's not going to happen tomorrow or this quarter or even this year, but over time, that leveling of the playing field means more business here in the United States.
Yeah, and that's why, Dagan, we saw all those deals happening. I mean, Ireland, what are you talking about? A corporate tax rate of 12.5%?
Right. Exactly. But this, Jamie Dimon, you questioning Jamie Dimon, you both hit on why corporate tax reform is important. And to all the Democrats out there who acted like, again, the false facts that you saw across social media, that this is going to hurt more people than it helps, this is what we're talking about. This is how average workers, average Americans ultimately feel the benefits of corporate taxes being cut dramatically and put on a level playing field with the rest of the world, that they are sharing the wealth. You've had more than 100 companies announce how they're giving money back already to their employees in one way, shape, or form.
Hey, Maria, can I make one other point? You talked about the Fed raising interest rates maybe 4 times this year instead of 3. If the Fed is doing it because the economy's doing well, and then that's not necessarily a bad thing for markets. We know markets don't like when the Fed raises interest rates, but if they're doing it because we got a 3% growth rate and inflation, which has been running below their goal for years now, is finally getting up to their target, then that's not necessarily a bad thing for markets or the economy.
Yeah, you're right. And I did ask him about the risks around the Federal Reserve, unwinding that balance sheet, raising interest rates. Does the Fed risk snapping this economic traction as soon as it starts, in addition to taxes and Bitcoin?